All right, welcome to the Cheeky Midweeky, the founder and captain of Team Younger, Bigger, Stronger, More Attractive, and More Successful Than You, the Flying Dutchman, Yoeri. What's up, brother?
Thanks for having me on, Kier.
Pleasure, bro.
Appreciate the intro. That's the best one I've had so far.
Bro, it's fucking infuriating. It's like, he's how old? He doesn't have a background in strength and conditioning. Fuck this guy. So, you, like Fernando, come from a business background. Tell me why you're not in business.
Why am I not in? Well, I should tell my father too. No, so when I was younger, I remember I was in high school and I was always just madly into sports, like especially basketball, because I played basketball. I was terrible. I was small, white, unathletic, unskilled, like everything you could possibly think of, and then just be about that life in basketball. And I remember you had to do like some project before graduating high school, and you had to combine different courses and then turn it into some kind of finishing project. And I remember mine was PE. So what I did is I wrote a training program. Literally, when I was 17 years old, I wrote a training program, one for soccer and then one for basketball. I did that with a friend of mine who played soccer, and I played basketball. And I just made a strength and conditioning program for those two sports. I haven't been able to find it since, because it's somewhere on paper. It's not on a laptop or a computer, but I assume it's fucking hilarious. But that's where I was interest-wise when I was 17, but I just never felt like it was a viable option for a career. And I had, let's call it quote unquote, external pressure to get a university degree that's worth something. So that kind of pushed me, again, I'm not naming any names, but they're very close to me, to push me towards like a university degree that kind of mattered. So that pushed me slightly towards business, because in high school, I was always very good at the economic stuff, and business just seemed like the logical solution. I always saw a career in marketing as like the most fun thing for me to do. And I just saw sport as something on the side that I really love to do. And I would have always wanted to go pro, but I realized like that was never an option. And to just in between, little side note, I was this dumb. I thought Brian Scalabrine, AKA, you know who that is, the Red, AKA White Mamba, he scored like 2 points a game in the NBA. So then I said, well, I score 5 in my amateur league when I was 14. Hence, I score more than him, so I should be able to make the NBA. That was my reasoning when I was 14 years old. So that's side note done. Went into business school, sports just on the side, and basically halfway through my bachelor's, I got really into CrossFit as a competitor.
Sorry to hear that.
Huh? I really got into it as a competitor, because I stopped playing basketball, and I started doing local and national competitions, started doing really well. And from there, I started coaching people, because I was just so dedicated to the process that I started learning to be able to coach myself. And then naturally, I started to help others. And from there,
you train the lady. She's a beast.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. So I still have like a little bit of skin in the game in CrossFit right now, but we can discuss my perspectives on it a little bit later. But so I would start helping other people, with their movements. Basically, that's how I started, kind of working as a trainer. Is I would look at movements. I was like, that's not very efficient. So I'd start coaching people. And after a while, I went up to one of the owners at a local gym here, and I was like, can I just do like an internship, unpaid? I'm in college still, but I just love doing this. And I feel like, I can help you guys, and maybe you can help me. And they were like, sure, fuck it, let's do it. And I did an unpaid internship for about 9 months, just on the side, while I was also working and also in college, and then also, a competitive athlete. And from there, I got the job to start working as a personal trainer, just general population, started doing CrossFit classes, teaching all that kind of stuff. And after, I want to say 3 years as a CrossFit athlete, I decided if I wanted to make the step to European top level, that was going to be too much of a commitment for me physically, because I wasn't able to handle the loads necessary to compete at that level in CrossFit, because you need to do a ton of work.
Some other stuff as well.
Some other stuff is likely necessary to a certain extent. My body type wasn't ideal for CrossFit. I'm too short for basketball, too long for CrossFit.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, is this worth it to me to push for that level? It's probably not realistic. Am I going to be training 6 days a week, 4 hours a day for national level and not making anything or not earning anything? I was like, no, that's also not what I'm doing it for. And so then I decided to hang up the CrossFit Nanos and Metcons and get into coaching full time. And that's right when I got my first opportunity as also an unpaid internship with a basketball team here, the pro team in Amsterdam, which was unpaid, but technically it was a head of strength and conditioning role. So like my first role in strength and conditioning was immediately one where I basically had all the responsibilities, write the programming, return to play, everything, communicate with head coach. It was all immediately mine and nobody had ever guided me in the process. So like my first job actually working in sport was one where I got to fall flat on my face times and have to get up 26 in order to actually learn from my mistakes. So before
it's good because you know, yes, you can fall into bad habits and not have somebody looking over your shoulder and say, oh, you need to correct this. But there are other people in this industry as well where they'll have done 2-3 internships, been an assistant, and then they're getting to like age 30 and it's like, well, can they do this? Whereas like you've demonstrated, yes, I can do this. It was sloppy initially, but now like you've done a lot and you're still what, 27?
28 now. Yeah. So that's actually, I've thought about this pretty often. I made a lot of mistakes and I'm fortunate to have made it at semi-professional or lower levels than now. Because for instance, learning how to organize a weight room and how to structure a session so that you have an overview over 30 people at the same time, learning how to command a group of 30 people. I learned in a CrossFit class.
Yeah.
I learned with people just training for fun, but that have like literally they couldn't care less about the background and the intricacies of the program. They're literally just there to get a sweat in. And you have to make all of them pay attention to what you're trying to get them to do as safely and efficiently as possible, even though they've just had 9-hour workday and they're tired and they're just trying to get it in. So now when I'm working with athletes, and again, I have a group of 30 people, it comes as second nature to me because I've been exposed to it where I could make a ton of mistakes because what would happen is I would have 5 classes in a row. First class would be terrible because I didn't know where to position myself. I didn't know how to set things up, how time would work. And then the second class would get better. Third class would get better. Fourth one, fifth one, you're probably tired and it's terrible again. But you really learn how to structure for a group setting at a very low risk environment. Now, same with the programming. I got to make mistakes with athletes where maybe how we trained wasn't optimal. Maybe I got them results to a certain extent, but I didn't ruin them. And I got to learn a lot from it because there wasn't as much risk. Now, if I'm talking about my current situation and I'm talking about players that might get sold for 70 million next year, I don't want to never have been, it's shitloads of money. I don't want to be in a situation where I've never actually been in the position to be responsible to make mistakes. So if I've never actually had a head role somewhere and been responsible for programming, been responsible for exercise execution, all that kind of stuff, and now the first time I do it was with an athlete that's worth 70 million, then that's probably not going to put me in the best situation to succeed because either I'm going to be oblivious to the possible mistakes, the potential mistakes I can make, or two, I'm just going to try to play it safe and not try to lose my job. Either which is not going to be optimal for performance. So I feel like it was tough because I didn't really have a mentor to guide me through all these things, which is, of course, if you're an assistant somewhere, you have a mentor that guides you. But on the other hand, it helped me make the mistakes that now when I did get the head role at a big organization like I'm in now, it's a lot more of a smooth transition because I've been the head guy at like from a very small organization or team to bigger ones, more implications, more risk to where I am now.
Did the basketball lead to the soccer?
Yes and no. So I had my first team. So that was Apollo Amsterdam. They technically highest level in Holland, but like a lower tier team. Then from there, I got to Den Bosch, which is a top 4 team in the country. So that was a bigger organization. I started working with the Dutch men's national basketball team and the 3-on-3 national basketball team, which we just, of course, qualified for the Olympics. And from there, so then Bosch and working with the national teams, I got introduced to Ajax because they were looking for a coach for the under 23s. And I mean, Amsterdam's it's a big city, but it's also pretty small.
About 4
So
million, right?
how many?
Is it like 4 million people?
No, way less, way less,
Oh, really?
way less. Yeah, it's pretty small. And
Tokyo is the population of Australia.
really? Holy crap.
20 million. Like greater Tokyo is 20 million people.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Yeah, so from there I got that role at the under 23s. Well, basically I started with the under 19s, under 23s, and last year under 23s and assisting with the first team, and then now basically promoting to head of strength at Ajax.
How much do you feel like the business, well, the perceived weakness of, oh, he comes from a business background, has actually been a strength? Because if you look at the career trajectory that you've had, I'm certain that the way that you've branded yourself and put yourself out there has accelerated that relative to other people. Would you say that?
Yeah, I'd say if I were to realistically look at my own path so far and how fast it's gone, I'd say that's probably going to be one of the leading factors. Because there's going to be other, like, I know I've worked harder than the vast majority of people. I've spent more time trying to get better at my craft and be highly critical of what I do, which has also probably been a factor. But I do understand that I have certain maybe personality traits that allowed me to, quote unquote, climb the corporate ladder a little bit faster. And I do think those might have been developed through my background in business, whether it's actually getting the degree in business or my interest in the first place in business, because I always feel like, oh, are we developed in college, or is it those kind of thinkers that go to college, like that kind of thing? So I'm not certain whether it's through the business degree or my interest in it, but what I have noticed especially is what makes a good head of strength at a large organization is not what makes a good assistant, and it is not what makes a good head of strength at a smaller organization.
This is the theme of the fundamentals. Yeah.
Yeah, because what happens is, so you start working and you start coaching, and it literally is about, okay, what exercise is going to be most likely to drive such and such adaptation? Yeah. How can I make sure that my athletes perform these exercises as safely as possible, as efficiently as possible, to reach that desired adaptation? Like, that's the priority. And once you go further up, again, the quote unquote corporate ladder, the less important that becomes. Now, I know that's going to ruffle some feathers and people are going to be like, oh, it's still super important. Yes, it is. It absolutely is, because it has to do with how I'm going to get these athletes better. And that's super important. But if you're not able to lead other people as a head of strength in a big organization, if you're not able to get other people to look in the same direction and move in the same direction as you, you are going to be unsuccessful. I don't care how good you are as a coach within the weight room or on the field, on the court, whatever it is. If you're not able to influence other people to move in some direction that you want them to move, you're not going to be successful. And the, I guess, good thing that I never had even thought of until last year, or maybe a little bit earlier, and it's kind of manifested over the past years, is my business degree has given me a massive step ahead to prepare me for this kind of role compared to the role at a smaller team or an assistant's role. Because I didn't have the formal education in the coaching aspect, like literally weight room, pitch, court, etc., but it did give me an advantage into leadership and working with other people, communication skills, all those skills that are highly important as a head of strength or head of performance, director of performance, whatever role it is, the higher up you get in the again, quote unquote, corporate ladder, for a lack of a better saying.
In my mind, I feel like in big sports organizations, a true high performance manager is almost like that White House chief of staff. It's like, you recognize what like the big boss is good at and bad at, and you're like, no, fucking concentrate on this. No, you cannot talk to this person. And then you ideally become that kind of hub that everything passes through and keep like trying to move everybody in the same direction. But it's weird. Like, we've never talked about this, between us, but I always think like the way to be the best intern is to be a house elf. the way to become a director is to be the best coach in the room, but then the way to become a winning director is to be able to clone yourself and basically drive the organization towards what it is you're trying to do, because typically nobody else is going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I really enjoy coaching and I really enjoy my process so far, but I do realize my added value likely in the future will be in a director of performance role. Like that's basically where my character traits probably serve me best. And that is, like you said, like you have a bunch of specialists in your organization. You're always going to have those. And we know just through understanding human biases, they're going to overvalue whatever thing they specialize in. And the beauty of being that director of performance is playing the, I don't want to put it like negatively, but playing the political game to make them feel that their specialty is valued, but making sure that they don't overvalue it within the organization's process. So if I can have all these specialists and I basically put them in their best position and situation to succeed, then I know we're likely going to have a positive effect on performance. But if I'm a good coach, but my director of performance doesn't put me in a situation to succeed, or someone else is overshadowing my ability to coach, am I really influencing wins or losses? Like, am I really doing something that's going to drive organizational performance, or am I just really good at my job, but I'm just being hindered in my ability to influence anything that truly, quote unquote, matters? So that's why I've kind of gravitated towards, and I know like somewhere in the back of my head, I'm probably going to be shifting towards more of a director of performance role. But I do know I have a very long time to go. One, with the fact that leading people when you're younger than most others or less tenured than the other people you're working with is a challenge. And one that I'm going to have to make a bunch of mistakes to learn from them, so that when I do get into that director of performance role, that I'm going to be best suited to actually, like I said, have a positive influence on performance. So I know that's going to be a long-term goal, but I do feel like that's likely to be my career trajectory. Thank you very much.
I found the same thing, like for me, it was like, it's almost like mentally you're there already. And you obviously the skill set's not complete, but you think, fuck, I can do a half decent job of this, but like nobody wants to give a 30-year-old, I think I was 30 or 31 at the time, 30. Nobody wants to give a 30-year-old a high performance director title for the reasons that you just talked about. Do you feel that it's been like more business, or that kind of like being, in the best possible sense of the word, a generalist in CrossFit that's allowed you to make a habit of having success in sports that you have never been a practitioner in, like kickboxing? Am I right in thinking you don't have a combat sport background?
I do not have, trust me, if Bader were to touch me with one hand, I'm running.
If he fucking touches kickboxers with one hand, they're normally running.
Exactly. I think it's just a combination of everything coming together. I do feel like my ability to transition between sports is likely a result of me being a generalist from the beginning. So not necessarily having a ton of, I didn't overvalue one thing over the other because I grew up in one sport, and then I learned to only look through the lens of that sport. So if I grow up within the confines of one sport, then I just basically learn how to work in that one sport. And I started working literally when I began. I started working with weightlifters, CrossFitters, powerlifters, basketball players, soccer players, field hockey. I've worked with tennis. I've worked with MMA, boxing, kickboxing, list goes on. And you try to help all of them. So then instead of thinking, oh, I need to train this way because that's how we've trained such and such athletes in this sport, you start to think, okay, what are the overlapping aspects that I know apply to all athletes? Human locomotion is universal. Like that's one of the things we know. Okay, so they're all human beings. They all have 4 limbs. Hopefully, at least the ones I work with have all had 4 limbs. So they have 2 legs, 2 arms, they have a torso, and they have a head that's hopefully partially functioning. with the combat sport athletes, that's not always the case anymore, but let's just say it's functioning. So we know there's always a certain kind of overlap between sports. Then from there, it came down to, and this is where you've been very influential. Nick DeMarco has been very influential. I want to say James Smith has been very influential. Is you've all, the three of you, and of course many more, Dan Pfaff also, you've always preached principles. Principles lead everything else. So if I set up core principles of saying, okay, for instance, for mine is one, I want a movement, or I want a human being that can move like a human being first. Then I want athletic development second, and then I want athletic development specially designed for the sport they're training thirdly. From there, I can just say, okay, where is this athlete along this chart? That's one of my core principles of how I work. Then that basically comes down to how you always say, okay, we reverse engineer the demands of the sport. So we look at bioenergetics, biodynamics, biomotor qualities, this and that. We also look at, okay, what does this sport consist of? How important is technical? How important is tactical, mental, physical? How important is every aspect? And then if I look at all these different things, I can slowly start to understand we have these commonalities between sports. What are the differences? And then I can target those as kind of like the cherry on top. Because for most athletes you're going to be working with in the beginning of your career, because they're unlikely to be highly talented or, you know, the best of the best, you're more likely going to see the commonalities than the differences between the sports. Those come at a later training age or when they're a little bit more talented or at higher levels. So for me in the beginning, when I started working with all these different sports, it was just find the commonalities and then see if I can make those better, and then start to look at the differences between the sports and start to target those as they got further along. But again, I can't understate the importance of setting core principles to guide that process. And now the beautiful thing, I think, for me is now over the past years, it's basically trickled down to the point where I've been able to specialize into certain sports. And then you've had this baseline of understanding, really understanding and valuing the commonalities. And now it's saying, okay, how can I really make sure that when an athlete has reached that level of human development, athletic development, how am I going to optimize the sport specific stuff?
Do you find yourself making it like a conscious effort to change your interpersonal manner as you switch between those sports? Because obviously the culture, the cliche, basketball allergic to iron and sweat, combat sport athletes like flog themselves until, you know, their body's like, what's testosterone? Like all that kind of stuff. Do you make a real concerted effort?
I do. So when I first started working at Ajax, I was a little bit surprised because I felt like the adjustment would be to learn a new sport, right? Of course, I understood soccer. Like, it's not like I didn't know it because I grew up with it. It's such a massive sport here. But I felt like that was going to be the biggest issue, right? Okay, how am I going to reverse engineer the demands of soccer versus kickboxing or basketball, which were the sports that I primarily specialized before I started working at Ajax. And it turned out that that was just not the case. Reverse engineering demands, I mean, it's tough. Let's not get it twisted. It's very important, but it is not even remotely as important as being able to communicate with the players and the staff, and then to make them trust you. And like I said, have all the everyone basically moving in the same direction. And that was a tough adjustment for me when I started working with Ajax, was to speak in their language, to get the same message across that I would have in kickboxing, working with a botter or working with MMA fighters or basketball players, but now adjusting that message to the soccer population, because they view training as totally different. Like, they think training is, oh, we're doing upper body. Why? Because nobody trains legs, because if you train legs, you're going to be fatigued. I'm fatigued. I'm not good at my sport. So we're just training upper body. Like, look at Bayern. Like, they all got big and everyone's like, oh yes, like that's how you're supposed to train. I'm like, oh, okay. So
fucking Germans, bro.
Yeah. So the biggest thing was definitely like adjusting your message to the crowd you're working with, because it's not about what you say, it's about what they hear. That's the most important part. And if you can adjust your message and you can make them to trust you, you have higher intent. And higher intent, regardless of whatever methodology you find important and valuable, if you follow Franz Bosch, or if you're all Olympic weightlifting, or you just do the big 3 lifts, or you say just sprint 18 times a week, if there's high intent, you're probably going to get better results than another group that might do the same methodology or something completely different, but without the intent. So yeah, the interpersonal skills and adjusting those to the situation you're in, super valuable. It's not about what you say, it's about what they hear.
So to wind up, where did you get that outstanding American accent?
To be honest, I think it's largely Pokemon when I was young. And then secondly, following the NBA religiously from like age 11. I don't know.
JJ is the only one that's cool without a fucked up accent. Fernando is a fucking Argentinian dude that went to school in Wales. And then I spend my fucking life changing my accent so I can be understood by Americans. Did you spoke English from day one, like growing up?
Well, yeah, I believe we actually get it. What is like age 7 or 8? You get it like in was that like primary school or something?
Yeah.
I did choose when I went to high school, so that's age 12 here. I did choose to do bilingual education, so half your class is in English. Because, you know, I just felt like that would be a better move for the future, because I always like, you know, Holland's going to be too small. I want to move. And then after high school, I went to college in the States, was supposed to do my entire undergrad. Due to money, finances, everything, I had to move back after my first semester. And then since then, working in basketball, tons of Americans. So you often have to speak English. My roommate over the past years was a German, so we always spoke English. And Ajax, same thing, a lot of non-Dutch players, like a lot of Southern Americans, so you always speak English, and they definitely can't understand me because I have an American accent. So just been exposed to English often because nobody speaks Dutch, so like you have to learn a second language if you want to learn something, because if you can't speak English and you want to get something to know about the sports performance field, either you're going to get Franz Bosch because it's in Dutch, or you're going to have to learn English.
Or Henk. Is Henk's materials in Dutch?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if it's actually in Dutch too.
Really interesting. And obviously, it helps to learn English in Amsterdam because of all the well-behaved, high-class English tourists.
Those are only in city center. I try to not
hey,
get
mate,
there.
Where's the fucking prostitutes?
We have those plenty.
All right, JJ. Before we go, if Team Builder, Train Heroic, and Bridge Athletic were on the prison yard together, who would be holding whose pocket?
They'd be holding Team Builder's pocket, wouldn't they?
That's a fucking outstanding answer. Yoeri, bro. Thank you for doing the Cheeky Midweeky.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.